Hey there, everyone, and I thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another episode of my Orchid Adventures with me, Maria Young. Okay, folks, so in today's episode, what we're going to do is introduce you to a whole new method of rescuing or encouraging your orchids to grow new growths of either roots or also new growths of keikis. And of course, what we are doing is we are promoting and encouraging this to happen on our stunted or sickly orchids using this new method called the wrap method.
That's right, we will be wrapping our orchids here today, and we will be saving our orchids in a very special way.
Alright, well, maybe not that type of wrapping, and you guys see why I would never make it as a rap star, right? Yeah, try again. Like, maybe never? So here we have a Vanda that I did a video prior to, and we discussed the fact that at that time I had this Vanda for 6 months, and we did not notice any type of growth in its root system. For 6 months it had the same root system. So indeed we noticed that something was going on and it had been stunted. Also, with the fact that the foliage system, even though we had this one particular right here that did show signs of growth, it really doesn't look so hot either, and you're seeing the other foliage right here, which appears to be hanging on by a thread. So we had to find a way to encourage some new growth on this particular Vanda, in which what we decided to do was a semi-water culture on this, trying to promote some root growth in the stem area, because as I stated, here there was no possible way. For 6 months it did not show or expose any type of growth. So what we went ahead and did, because this had quite a long little stem right here, we decided to focus our attention where we could get some possible moisture into this area and possibly promote some new growth in roots, or possibly some keikis, something, anything that would revive this orchid right here. So again, we did the semi-water culture, submerging this entire area up until here, where that water could be saturated and focused into this area. Now the problem was that it also had saturated into this root area as well, because the entire portion was underwater. So for about a month this was doing great. It actually did start showing signs of new growth, or nubbins, which was possible new growths of keikis or perhaps roots. Now the problem that I was having though is the roots actually started showing signs of extreme discoloration, and also if we looked at the edge of the roots as well, we were starting to notice blackening, which I assumed was a promotion of some form of rotting now in the roots. And because the roots were still green, they still did serve a purpose in the regards of allowing the water to still get into the actual plant itself. So indeed, I was trying to sustain these roots for just as long as I could to assist this plant in continuing to grow, so that this would have enough time to grow as well. But now, with the rotting in mind, or the discoloration of the roots, we indeed had to find yet another way, because again, this was killing off the roots, and that is definitely not what I wanted to do. So with that in mind, I really had to come up with a way where we could still centralize or have that water and that moisture just specific to a certain location, and I had to come up a way where it would not affect the other roots, or the roots that we were trying to sustain. So this is the method of choice that I came up with, and this is what I call the wrap method. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take a closer look of this so-called wrap method right here, and we're going to see exactly if this has been working or not. Then afterwards, what I'm going to do is give you more of an in detail step-by-step process of how I did this and what we will need to do to make this wrap method work. Okay, so here we are. We're just unraveling and unwrapping this paper towel that we've used. And as we take a closer look, you are definitely noticing little green bump areas or nubbins that we can definitely see coming right along. Definitely new growths of either roots or keikis. And if we turn this around, this indeed is the greatest news of all, folks. Take a look at that. Take a look at that. Not only have we seen a whole lot of nubbins going on, but now we are seeing a definite root that has also come up as well after about 6 months of no root growth at all. So indeed, I would say that this semi-hydration method, which we first started out with, and then this wrap method has also helped to encourage this new growth or these new growths to come about, and indeed we have a greater chance of rescuing this orchid. Okay, so let's now talk about how this wrap method works, and also let me give you a in detail step-by-step process on how to do this. Okay folks, so what I've used is this industrial type of paper towel. Now please don't get it confused with your everyday household paper towel, because this is more industrial, it's more sturdy, and as a matter of fact this is actually reusable. So again, it is industrial and it's not easy to break away or fall apart when it does get wet. So what we're going to do here, folks, is we're going to actually cut this industrial type of paper towel into strips. And here we go, we're just cutting it into strips, just like I mentioned, and we probably can get about 3 strips on this particular paper towel right here. And really depending on the size of the plant or the area that you will need to cover will actually determine exactly how many strips you will need to cut out. And once you've cut out enough strips to cover the entire area, you can go ahead and start the wrapping process. As you can see, this particular orchid right here has a pretty long stem area, so it actually took me 4 or 5 strips to completely wrap around the area that I needed to wrap around. And yes, it might take a little bit of time trying to wrap around the roots and maneuver that paper towel all around this area. But again, it is well worth the effort, because indeed we can save these orchids and we can encourage new roots and new growths off of this orchids by using the wrap method. Now, although we do want the dressing to be wrapped around the stem area pretty snugly, we don't want it to be too tight, because we have to allow good air circulation within this area to also allow this material to dry out. But at the same token, we also want this to be snug enough to where the moisture can get into the stem area. So we just have to be mindful of that. Not too tightly wrapped around, but yet still snug enough. Once you have the area in focus completely wrapped, now it's all a matter of determining exactly how often we need to water these orchids. And because I keep my orchids outdoors, my orchids are well ventilated and of course get a lot of air and breeze circulation throughout. So indeed, I can water my orchids about 2 to 3 times a day, of course watering the regular roots and then saturating the wrapping as well. And because it is outdoors with the sunlight and also the air and the breeze, this will dry out a whole lot faster, so I don't have to worry about any rotting, mildew, or fungus that might set in within the dressing area. Now, if you guys are keeping your orchids indoors, then I would say to water it a lot less. I would say maybe about once a day would be sufficient, but of course you're going to have to check your area and determine exactly how often you will need to water your orchids. And as a safety precautionary, I would advise you to check on the stem area quite often. I would actually recommend that you go ahead and undress this area about twice a week, so you can go ahead and inspect it and make sure nothing is going on. And maybe once a week you may want to go ahead and completely change out the dressing, and also spray the stem area down with peroxide just to ensure that there are no germs or bacteria that is setting in there, and just to keep it safe and clean. And folks, also, if you cannot get a hold of this industrial type of paper towel right here, no worries. You can actually use other material in lieu of this, just depending on what you have. The main focus is to have some form of material or medium that is going to allow enough moisture to get into the specific location that you need it to get into, but also be airy enough that air circulation can get in there as well, and also dry out the material of choice. And a couple of examples of other material that you can also use: you can actually use sphagnum moss, just as long as you can wrap it around and secure it in place. And you can also take a simple washcloth, cut it down into strips, and also wrap it around in the same way that I've done right here. Okay, so in this vander right here, my primary focus is to encourage new growth of roots, because again, the roots that it had was simply withering away, and it was only a matter of time where soon enough we would not have any way to get some moisture or watering into this vanda. So it was quite critical to get some roots off of this vanda as soon as possible. Now, my primary focus on these two orchids right here is actually not the root system, because as you can see, it has a substantial amount of roots on here. But what I really wanted was to promote some form of keikis, actually as many as I could get without damaging the plant, of course. But as you can see, this right here is a rather big gal, but she doesn't have that much foliage except for the top portion, so she looks a bit lanky and a little bit awkward. And indeed, I thought if I could get some keikis, it would create such a beautiful display and quite a great amount of blossoms for this orchid right here. So for those of you that have the same interest with producing keikis, here's an added tip just for you. If you guys want to create keikis, but you don't want to do it in such an unnatural way with using keiki paste, and also, as you guys know, keiki paste can be rather expensive as well, there is actually a more organic way of trying to promote keikis on your orchids. And all that is, folks, is getting your hands on 100% organic coconut water, which you can find in your local gas stations or convenience stores, and also at your local grocery stores as well. And all you would have to do is saturate the area with that coconut water, and also the roots as well, and this in fact can help your orchid and encourage it to grow these much needed keikis. And of course, this is what I've actually done for both of these orchids right here. So we're just going to have to stay tuned and see exactly if we are capable of doing just that. And just to talk to you a little bit more about the natural growing way of orchids, especially when they've become sick, or they're dying, or perhaps for whatever reason they've become stunted, they have a natural mechanism to know exactly what they need to do in these dire conditions. But there are certain times that they are not capable of doing exactly what they need to do to either recover, bounce back, or create a new growth to sustain its longevity and its livelihood. What we are doing in this case is actually giving them the prime opportunity and the conditions to encourage exactly what they would normally do. So what we're doing in essence in this case, folks, is we are really giving it extra special treatment in the regards of being capable of providing it with the attention and the care and the conditions that they would need to give them more of an added benefit, giving it a chance to survive, flourish, and indeed to grow. And I am truly hoping that this video is beneficial to you in providing you with more information on how to rescue, grow, and also promote and encourage new growth on your orchids. You can also check out my other videos where we have also discussed rescue methods in the form of the semi-water culture, also the deep hydration method, also rescuing and encouraging new growth via the semi-terrarium method, also via the spag and bag method, and also via the spag and pot method as well. And now with this video, also the wrap method. And I am truly hoping that with the information that I provided you today, along with some of the other information that I have given you in past videos, that you will be able to store these tips and also these procedures, that if ever you encounter this situation, you know exactly what arsenal of weaponry you can use to combat whatever situation you are going through. And with that being said, folks, that indeed is a wrap. No pun intended there, folks. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to yet another episode of my Wild Orchid Adventures with me, Maria Young. And of course, if you guys like this video, please be sure to give it 2 thumbs up. And if you guys want to subscribe and stay up to date with the latest and greatest news of my orchid adventures, please be sure to subscribe. Also, if you guys want to join me on my Facebook adventures, please do so as well at My Orchid Adventures. And if you guys want to contact me via snail mail, you can do that as well at the following address provided right here, folks. I thank you guys so much for tuning in, and yes, you guys already know I love you all. Mwah!